basically introducing a charge cap, which you can opt in to stay and only have, the 6 hours of super cheap charging, or you can opt out of that cap. And if you do very occasionally need to charge more than 6 hours, the remainder of your charge over the 6 hours will be billed at your kind of standard day rate. We actually see that the average charging session across the 3 gigawatts of cars is 2.5 hours a day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Energy Unwrapped Podcast. Thank you for listening and watching. Today's guest is Alex Schoch from Octopus Energy, who's kindly found some time in his diary to chat to us. Thank you for coming on, Alex.
Thanks, Mick. Great to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So, about a month ago, when the solar export tariff got reduced, I wrote an article that said the end is nigh, 15p down to 12p. It's all based on wholesale pricing, and I put all this up on Twitter. And you replied and said there's quite a lot to discuss about solar and the underlying drivers. So I asked you to come on the podcast, and you said yes. So here we are. What are those drivers?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, it's a fun topic. If I think about, paying people for export, and it's incredibly valuable, right? Like it's so important to, if you do have excess solar energy that you're producing on your solar system, that you're able to kind of, get paid for it at a fair market rate. Before we kind of dive into the details of that, I think one of the really kind of important things that I think often gets lost, and actually the UK is quite different because we've had these very high export prices than most of them or all other markets in the world, which is if you get solar in Germany, in Australia, in the Netherlands. Well, the Netherlands is a bit odd because they've had net metering for a very long time, so let's ignore that. But you first focus on how can I self-consume those electrons that I've generated on my own roof, and you add a battery, and suddenly you go to being like 75% self-sufficient. So for 250 to 275 days a year, you're literally generating and consuming your own electrons, and you're just completely avoiding having to import anything. Now we've had back to kind of a history of Octopus export tariffs. We've had Octopus Outgoing, which was initially launched I think 2018, 2019.
2019. It was at the end of the feed-in tariff, wasn't it? Because there was a gap between the feed-in tariff finishing and then there being any available export to new installs. And
so then it was, and you're right. And then there was that gap before the smart export guarantee came in. Which I think, generally there was no no price guidance. It was basically any supplier with more than 80,000 customers had to offer one. Those, I think, generally in the market are ranged between like 4p or something like that, 2 to 4p. Yeah. We launched Octopus Outgoing before that came into place at 5p, and then as the Ukraine invasion and then the subsequent energy crisis took place, we first took that up to 7.5p, and then we bumped it up to 15p. And we actually just recently published a blog on it with a kind of plot that shows the wholesale prices and where the 15p was, and then rapidly after the peak of wholesale price craziness in 2022. Wholesale prices fell dramatically below our 15p rate, but we held it at 15p. But then, we just look at it, and as the number of solar customers have grown, we're also seeing, and you've talked about this a lot, more and more solar customers adding batteries. And actually, adding batteries is a really great thing for the individual homes because you can be more self-sufficient, you can use more of your electricity, but also it's a great thing for the kind of newer, smarter, cleaner grid that we're building, because this way we can store those excess electrons and either use them ourselves, or we can export it to when the grid is actually, is short, and we can help balance the grid with these distributed batteries. And so in that way, moving away from quite a high fixed flat rate to get paid, whatever the same amount, no matter what happens on the grid, to a more time-based.
Yeah, no matter whether it was 10 o'clock at night or 5 p.m. when the grid didn't think, it was still 15p. So there's no reward.
Exactly.
No sensible reward.
No incentive. Yeah, no incentive to move your consumption around. And now it's at 12p, which is still very higher than wholesale, especially, again to your point, at the peak generation hours, because if the sun is shining, every solar system, whether it's a big kind of utility scale ground mount solar system in a field in Somerset or your solar system, they're all pumping electrons onto the grid at the same time. And so if you look at our Flux tariff, for example, there's a reason why the Flux tariff has a much higher export price in the peak period, because that's when it is more valuable.
Yeah. And to that point, outgoing Agile, which tracks the underlying wholesale price, has obviously a similar pricing structure to Agile import. So when wholesale prices are low, you get a smaller amount for your export, but between 4 and 7 p.m. it rises because the grid needs it at that time. So long term, are these? Do you think that Flux export and Agile export will be like the future direction of travel?
So, I think we generally have the view that we want to have products and tariffs that suit everyone, suit everyone's personal needs, preferences, risk, comfort, levels,
technology,
and technology and what they have in the home. So I expect that over time, especially as we build more and more solar, it will be more beneficial for homeowners to be on a kind of export time of use type product versus a flat one, because the flat one will invariably go down over time as more and more solar gets built and gets connected, whether that's residential or grid scale or commercial. But there'll always be a subset, customers who just want certainty, I just want to know that I get whatever pence per kilowatt hour. And that's that. And we never want to force anyone into a specific kind of, direction. We always want to give options and let customers choose what is best for them based on their preferences, their technology, their setup.
Yeah, that sounds sensible. Yeah. So I realized in my own podcast, I've messed up the order a little bit because I didn't ask you about your role in Octopus. So when I looked on LinkedIn, you've got the grand title, Alex, of Group Director of Flexibility and Electrification. That must be a big badge on the old chest when you walk around the office. It is. Do you want to explain to us what that is and what you do?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I basically spend my time thinking about and working on how do we accelerate electrification of different segments in the economy. So transport, passenger vehicles, delivery vehicle, commercial vehicles, buses, heating. How do we electrify heating faster at pace, both kind of domestic as well as industrial, and how do we electrify more industrial processes? Because using electrons in their fight is just more efficient, is cheaper, it's better, and with all of that electrification comes an increase in electricity demand. And so that's where the flexibility part of my job comes in, which is how do you take all of that extra demand for electrons and integrate it into power systems and energy markets, help balance the grid, and share that value back with customers.
Right. So the flexibility as well comes from not just the demand side of the customer, it's also the grid side, and the obviously we know renewables are inherently sort of they're not stable. There's a one day there'll be an abundance, the next day there'll be a lull. So I imagine the flexibility comes from both angles and trying to marry those two bits up.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we've had integrated power systems, we've had flexibility has been balancing supply and demand. It just happens to be that up until very recently, all of that balancing has been turning up and down generation. We've been turning up and down gas plants, turning up and down coal power plants. Now, as we electrify more things, we can actually, choose when cars charge. We can preheat our homes. We can, and all of these things are very minute things on an individual household basis, but in aggregate across hundreds of thousands of homes, it becomes this huge, powerful, cheaper, cleaner way of balancing the grid.
Yeah, it's sometimes called like virtual power plants, isn't it, where you aggregate lots of very small items into a bigger sort of control with one button. Like you could even heat a hot water cylinder, heat everyone's hot water cylinder when there's a ton of wind and solar, and that would be another sort of example of just making better use of what we've got at that time.
Exactly.
So moving on to the cars then, there's obviously been quite a bit of hoo-ha I would like around the changes coming to Intelligent Octopus Go. So for those that don't know about Intelligent Octopus Go, it's Octopus's flagship EV tariff, and the intelligent part of it means it's sensible. So you come home at 5 o'clock at night, you plug your car in, the charger goes, whoa, bad time to charge. We'll schedule you later on when it's a better time to do that. And that better time could be based on lots of things, Alex, I suppose. Price, underlying wholesale price, demand in a region, or I don't know. Do you want to explain how? I've probably butchered that description, so I'll leave it to you to tell me better.
Not at all. You're spot on. It's a smart EV charging tariff. So what Octopus does in the background is we connect to either your car or your charge point, and every driver tells us, I want my car charged to this amount by this time, and that is like the top, like in the merit order of things that we solve for. That's the number one, right? Because no one's mobility needs always need to be met. Then you're absolutely right, Mick. We look at things like what are the cheapest times to charge? What's the grid congestion like? Are we, are we helping your local network operator kind of smooth out their congestion and kind of peak capacities at the transformer down your road? Or are we helping the system operator avoid curtailing some more wind in Scotland and actually using those electrons, because it's cheaper to use them than to pay the wind turbines to turn off and to fire up gas generators in somewhere else in the country. And, we do that on an individual basis. And then, as you were saying before, we aggregate, like every IO Intelligent Octopus Go customer is part of our virtual power plant. And so, that is now, almost 3 gigawatts worth of capacity. So just for reference, that's like, roughly 3, mid-sized nuclear power stations.
Wow.
So it's not small. And the premise of the tariff has always been, you get 6 hours of super cheap, smart charging for your car. And you also get 6 hours for your whole home overnight. And so the changes that have been coming, and we've kind of talked to, been communicating with our customers for a couple of months now as we've been building this kind of features, basically introducing a charge cap, which, you can opt in to stay and only have, the 6 hours of super cheap charging, or you can opt out of that cap. And, if you do very occasionally need to charge more than 6 hours, the remainder of your charge over the 6 hours will be billed at your kind of standard day rate. Now, we actually see that the average charging session across the 3 gigawatts of cars is 2.5 hours a day.
Wow.
A charging session. And, I think that the other thing is a happy EV is a plugged-in EV when it's at home. So if there's anything that, and because what, I still, I've been in the electrification kind of sector and space for almost 20 years now. And I still have friends and family telling me, oh, but it takes so long to charge your car. And my point is actually, it takes me about 3 seconds. I get home, I plug in, and I walk through the door, and I forget about it, and the car just charges itself.
And the next morning it's full. It's not, cause when we used to have, well, I've had obviously fossil cars all my life. It's like, right, the car's beeped at me now. I'm down to 20 miles left. I'll go and fill the tank up. And I suppose it's hard to get out of that mentality that we've all been in for decades. So what you're suggesting is don't let it come get your state of charge down to 20% before you plug back in. If it's at 40%, just plug it in, fill it up. Yeah. I suppose that there's always somebody who's got to worry that, you shouldn't be putting it to 100% and leaving it sat at 100%, which is probably true, but you're not suggesting leaving it sat at 100%. We're saying just top it up when you've used a bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, the target percentage does depend on the battery chemistry and the warranty of your car, but I think I've had an EV for years. I just always charge it to 80%. Unless I'm going for a long drive, and then I whack it up to 100%, and I still have 92% available capacity, kind of a state of health of the battery, and my EV is, dare I say, 7 years old now.
Wow. It's got a better percentage than your iPhone.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's, one thing that I always think about in terms of, you're absolutely right. There is a behavioral change as you electrify and you move from a petrol vehicle to an EV. But then again, we do this with our phones, right? Yeah. We get home, we plug it in on the kitchen counter, or in the living room. We get to our desk and we plug in our phone. Don't even think about it, right?
Yeah, we don't run it down to, right, it's down at 5% now, I best plug it in. It's sort of,
yeah.
You know, you're a charger, plug it in. There's a wireless pad, put it on. Yeah.
Exactly.
So going back to those 6 hours, so for the uninitiated with car chargers, a home car charger normally runs at around 7 kilowatts per hour. So your 6 hours will get you 42 kilowatt hours, which is a sizable chunk of a lot of cars. Some cars have only got 50 kilowatt hour batteries, some even less. I suppose the issue is with a lot of the larger, bigger cars now that are coming out with 100 kilowatt hour batteries. So you're not going to be able to fit a full charge in 6 hours for a big batteried car. And I suppose that's where some of the sort of people have gone a bit, I can't charge my car to 100%.
Yeah, but I think, a couple things that I think about there is as we mentioned before, you don't need to wait until your car is, at 5%. Just get home, plug it in, and charge it up, and it charges up to whatever state of charge you want. And for the occasional, long journey where you need to be at 100%, you're still talking about hundreds of pounds of savings per year versus being on a standard variable tariff.
So, for example, if you were down at 20% and you've got a 100 kilowatt battery, for example, 100 kilowatt hour battery, and you need to be full by the next morning. So if you plug in, you're going to get 42 kilowatt hours at the cheap rate, which has now dropped to ridiculously 3p or something. And then the remaining sort of 3 or 4 hours will be at your standard rate, which is around 30p per kilowatt hour. So that blended rate of those two charging sessions put together is still way cheaper than going and plugging it into a fast charger at your local supermarket or whatever. So I suppose that's the way to really think about it on those bigger chargers if you do need them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello, sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying today's podcast, it would be really helpful if you could hit like, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. It really helps push this out to other people who might want to listen. Thank you very much. back to the episode. So, do we have a timeline for when the IOG changes might be coming? I know they've been sort of talked about now for around 3 months, but I suppose you've got there'll be code changes and there'll be comms, and there's lots of things going on behind the scenes, I imagine, to make this seamless for us as customers.
Yeah, you can expect to see that rolling out in the next couple of weeks.
Fab. One other question I've got around IOG is the new rates. So obviously with the Iran crisis, it's been I imagine you've not sat still for a couple of months while this has all been going on. So we've had two versions for the last couple of years. We've had the fixed version and the variable version, and the fixed keeps changing because the availability of the fixed and the terms of the fixed keep changing, and I imagine that's just that you're reacting to wholesale prices as they are now and what they will look like in the next few months, whereas the variable almost seems to be like a price cap by price cap sort of adjustment. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, we're like the wholesale market is, especially the kind of the future wholesale market, 3 months out, 6 months out, 12 months out, is changing very dramatically. The UK, in the UK, it's especially the case because gas sets the price of electricity such a high percentage of the time. So other countries, we have retail businesses in Germany, France, Italy, Spain. They have not seen, such a huge impact to forward wholesale prices as we have in the UK. So we're constantly looking out and seeing, okay, well, what is the best possible value that we can give to customers today based on, an absolutely bonkers kind of dynamic market. And then we go out and we're fixed products. We go out and we buy that energy for the next 12 months. And that's why they get priced that way. Versus the variable product is, it follows the price cap methodology. So that's every quarter it changes. And, the way that I think about this is the variable products change on a quarterly basis with the wholesale market and underlying costs as well, because it's not just wholesale, it's not just the commodity cost, it's also all the what we call non-energy costs, so the costs of transmission and distribution and levies and taxes and all that fun stuff. Whereas with fixed, you know exactly what you're going to pay for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, however long that contract is. So that's the way that I think about that. And in periods of extreme uncertainty, and I'd say, that is definitely where we're at right now, we always kind of are very thoughtful about what we offer new customers to sign on to, because we don't want to kind of be giving them a bad deal. We always want to give them the best possible deal at that point in time.
I suppose you don't want to make any false promises that like the old days of get you on a cheap tariff and then flip you up in 3 months onto something way more expensive. That's not a good experience for anyone.
No, absolutely not.
Going back to your point about being held to ransom by the price of gas, this past 2 weeks has been so telling in that we've had a lot of wind, we've had a lot of sunshine, it's been bright, lovely bright March days, and the wholesale price during the day and in the evening when it has been windy and sunny has been pennies. It's been like amazing. But then you get to 4 o'clock and the gas burners have to turn on, and that jumps wildly. And like today, the wind's not particularly blowing much, and we look at Agile and it's expensive. So you can instantly see that difference of when gas dictates and when renewables dictate. And you just got to hope that long term that we can decouple that gas price from the underlying wholesale price. Maybe that's an episode because that could be a big discussion.
I mean that is that delves into some pretty niche / idiosyncratic energy policy topics, which We can cover if you want.
I
I'm
don't
not
think
sure. I'm not sure how many people.
I don't think I've actually got the. There's a lot of knowledge around contracts and curtailment and stuff. And maybe we'll get Robin on. Robin, he's the curtailment man into the creator of the wasted wind, and he could be a good person to have those conversations with. But I suppose the point I was making is that when there is renewables, the wholesale price does drop, and when there isn't, the gas takes over and the prices are high. So we can
and you can see that even with our greener days kind of forecast. You can even see that a few days ahead. Whereas Agile is great at the Agile prices are great at showing you what the next day is going to look like. And as you say, you can definitely see the correlation between percentage of renewables providing power versus the price, and then greener days kind of helps you look a couple of days ahead.
So for customers or people that listeners that have not seen the Greener Days forecast, it's been around for a few years now, and it looks ahead at wind and solar and sort of gives you an indication over the next 5 days of how green the grid is going to be, hence the name. And last year, they brought Octopus brought in a sort of reward to try and plug in on greener nights rather than red nights, non-green nights. So IOG customers get some Octo points for plugging in on greener nights. It's a bit of an incentive.
Yeah, and I mean, we're always looking for new and wonderful ways to kind of make greener days and nights, even more accessible and interesting for customers.
Yeah, I tweet it out sort of every day. I pull the info from the API and tweet it out and blue sky it out, and people do respond to it. They'll see that in 2 days it's a lot greener, and people will hold on to, if they can, will hold on 2 days charging their car and wait for the greener day. Even though the Octo points is a very small sort of reward, there's something about doing the right thing. But ultimately, I've run the Energy Stats website for 6 or 7 years, and people are definitely focused on money first and green credentials second. But if you can do both at the same time by incentivizing, then that's surely a good thing.
Yeah, well, anyway, message received, Nick. Rick, I'll look at increasing. We'll see if we can increase the Octo points reward.
and all any Octopus customer needs to do that is on Intelligent Octopus Go is just go to the Greener Days page, and I think you just have to opt in, and it's pretty simple, and it's an automated process behind the scenes. It's all good. I think you just get an email or something at the end with your bill saying you've got so many Octo points or something.
That's right.
Just going back to the tariffs, then, when you spoke about the variable and the fixed. There's been a few tariffs that have been pulled from availability for new customers, and is that just down to the volatility of the wholesale market at the moment?
Yeah, that's right. And they'll be back as soon as kind of get through the the impact of the war in the Middle East.
I suppose, as you alluded to earlier, you've got to be confident in being able to provide the tariff at the price you sort of display, because you don't want to have to pull it again, and it doesn't make for a sort of good customer experience, does it?
Yeah, but we still have plenty of different tariffs that customers can join, whether that's Intelligent Octopus Go, Cozy, Agile, Tracker.
Yeah,
all of those can be signed up to today.
Please don't bring any more tariffs, Ax. My website takes enough looking after it as it is. You're gonna
challenge accepted.
You're gonna drop something on me now, and you say, "Oh yeah, we've got this new one coming out."
Well, look, I think, as I said, our view is that as as people, as customers electrify their homes and their lifestyles, everyone's at a kind of different stage. And you mentioned that before with like, depends on what tech you have and, where you are and what your what your habits and lifestyle and your work life, are you out at work at 5 days a week? Do you work from home? There's so many different permutations. And our view is that we want to help we want to have different tariffs and products that appeal to all the different groups of customers based on the tech they have, their lifestyle, their needs, and just make sure they can have an absolutely best possible value.
Yeah, it's very sensible. One last point then, one last topic is something you released late last year with the association with BYD and the Dolphin car and the vehicle to grid, the Power Pack. I was wondering what the take up on that is like, and whether you, as yourself as group director of flexibility and electrification, that vehicle to grid and vehicle to load and is going to be almost like central to grid flexibility in the future.
Look, I think the potential is huge. Just thinking about it in terms of, your average EV with a 60 kilowatt hour battery can power, your home for several days. Just thinking about it in that quantum, right? The first vehicle to grid BYD Dolphin Power Pack customers are happily driving on streets near you, charging and discharging their car into the grid, and paying $299 for the car, the lease, the charger, the installation, and and free charging. We've had, so like I said, they're kind of hitting the road now. They're all kind of getting the chargers are getting installed. They're getting the G99s from the DNO so they can discharge as well. And we've had just for the Power Pack product alone, we've had over 10,000 customer inquiries. Wow. And this is just the beginning, right? Like, we've got like more and more exciting vehicle to grid kind of bundles and packages that are kind of in development. We recently in February announced a vehicle to grid tariff with Ford in Germany. And more and more car manufacturers are building the vehicle to grid technology into their cars. And we are working with many of them to kind of create those seamless bundles and packages where customers don't need to worry about, well, what charge point do I need to get? Who's going to install it? What tariff should I be on? Because all of that it's friction, it's complexity. And whilst you and I may love that level of complexity, a whole bunch of people don't want that and just want a simple thing that is taken care of, and they just, their car is charged whenever they need to be.
Yeah. So at the beginning of that, you said $299, and it's not £2.99 a month, it's £299 a month. But that does include lease of a car, free miles, and electricity for the home.
Yeah. And the charge point. And the installation of the
charge point, yeah. And I imagine they're a little bit more expensive than a conventional charge point at this time. They always used to be.
A little bit. Now we are firmly in the camp of AC vehicle to grid. So where the electricity comes out of the car already as alternating current, which is the how it's used in your home and how the electricity format in which the distribution grid works at. But in batteries, electricity is stored as direct current, so DC. So there's two types of technologies for vehicle to grid. One is it comes out of the car as direct current, and you have a more expensive charge point that has to convert it into AC, or it comes out of the car already as AC, and they have a much more affordable charge point.
So was the first description there, was that the Nissan Leaf version? Yeah. So on a previous podcast episode with Paul Arundale, he was one of the initial trials of the vehicle to grid with the Nissan Leaf many years ago. So yeah, and so he had a what was it at the time, 24 kilowatt hour Leaf sat outside his house acting as a home battery. So, but that was CHAdeMO, the other connector type rather than the Type 2 CCS. So, yeah, it's almost like technology's not catching up, or it's taking a while to. We had this conversation about CHAdeMO versus Type versus CCS, and that CCS always seemed to be a little bit behind. It was like the VHS versus Betamax sort of thing for those old enough to remember such a struggle. So,
yeah, well, I would actually say the VHS Betamax is more the AC DC debate versus the CHAdeMO CCS.
Right.
If we really want to go niche, because like at the end of the day, you're talking about putting a bidirectional inverter in the car. There's already an inverter in the car, so you're literally just talking about changing the power conversion system a little bit.
So would that then reduce the cost of having to put more components in to do?
Yeah, then you have a lot less components and much simpler charge point on your wall in your home versus a 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 pound bidirectional charge point you need for
which
a CCS approach.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. Yeah. Right. Well, I'm going to let you go because I know you've got a meeting in a few minutes. So I can only thank you so much for your time, especially during this energy crisis and stuff. But there's been some wonderful points, and thank you for clarifying a lot of the thoughts that go around my head on a daily basis. So thanks a lot for your time, and we'll hopefully catch up soon.
Always a pleasure, Mick. Take care.
Thank you very much.